All right, so this week in Pax Day, we got to talk to the devs for over an hour about all of the new things that are going to be coming to Pax Day over the last couple of months. We got some new pictures of UI elements that are going to be coming into the game based on player-related feedback, and we got 2 new Miracle lore posts. We're going to be talking about all of that and a little bit more. So hello and welcome back, all of you incredibly professional consumers of Pax Day and Pax Day related content out there. I'm Eltari, the professional gamer, and this is another episode of the PAX Friday Review, the show where we talk about the fun, interesting, new, and exciting information that has dropped for Pax Day over the last week. Like I said, this week we got a full hour plus conversation with the developers talking about things like knighthoods, baronies, kingdoms, parishes, enchanting, Lyonesse 2.0, the exclusive resource that you can only get from Lyonesse. Yes, you can bring them out of Lyonesse and sell them to people who are not going, so it is not a forced PvP endeavor here. You will be able to buy them outside of Lyonesse. We talked about trade towns. We talked about so many things. So we're going to just say, hey, you know what? Go and take a look at that interview if you wanted to. And we're just going to give a quick little TLDR here. Other than that, we are going to head over to playpaxday.com to check out some of the lore posts for the new miracles for this week, and also take a look at some of the new UI elements that have already been getting built in direct correlation to feedback that we, the players, gave Mainframe. So we're going to get to it. There's a lot to cover. I will see you over there. All right, so here we are on playpaxday.com, and this was the post that accompanied our interview, and it was titled The Journey So Far. It was primarily just a pretty big breakdown of Mainframe as a development studio in regards to them working on Pax Day. It started, for those of you who are new to the channel and are unawares of the background for Pax Day, development started back in 2019. Mainframe spent a decent amount of time during that point in time just building out proof of concept as well as building out their team. By 2020, they had a lot of the basic concepts and designs ready to go, and they knew that they were going to be using Unreal Engine for it. In fact, part of the reason why they hadn't developed the game yet was because a powerful tool like Unreal Engine didn't exist for them to make the level of ambition that they were trying to make, with also the team size that they were aiming for as well, which, for those of you who were wondering, Mainframe's trying to make a smaller team. But we basically go through all of the different areas of the game, all the way from the very one. This was actually one of the first ever screenshots that we got of initial crafting in Pax Day. I remember reviewing this like almost 3 years ago, probably a little bit longer than that. But either way, we got into early access. We got a bunch of bugs fixed within the first couple of months that set timelines back, however, and then they started getting a bunch of feedback from us, the players, in early access, and they realized they needed to shift a little bit in terms of their priorities, specifically with regards to locomotion and combat, and that's what they did. We ended up getting the Market Square update, which was more stuff that they were cooking before early access, and then they brought it in after they finished all of their bug fixes. This was also an important area of the economy that needed to be implemented into the game rather than just bartering things. They wanted to have stationary places where players could list their goods because economy is important in Pax Day. And then after they came out with the market update, they did have to come out with a subsequent update to include grace so that gold has a value to it, and they're obviously still working on improving that. And then that brought us all the way to verse 3, which was the most substantive update in Pax Day ever. We got a huge retrofitting of all of the combat equipment was being reassessed. Instead of having the 6 pieces that we had before, it got reduced down to basically 4. At least those are the 4 that give you spells right now, the 4 main pieces. Then you have your arms and your gloves as well as all of your jewelry. But nevertheless, huge huge undertaking getting all of this out. It took them longer than expected, and then they also ran into a couple of issues with how they were batching their patch. So they wanted to make sure that everything was bundled together. They didn't want to, do two different branches, so they ended up taking just about 6 months to get verse 3 out. Now it has been out for a while, and they started teasing the new stuff. So we have a full interview with the developers covering pretty much everything that's coming in the next 4 to 6 months, it sounds like. And I'm really excited for a lot of those updates because I think they're things the game desperately needs in terms of breadth of content. I had a lot of people commenting on the interview. I read all of the comments, and one of the things that I was noticing was this resounding upsetness with the fact that we don't have things like weather, horses, and the ability to crouch and sneak was one of them as well. And it was actually a trend. There were a couple of ones that I responded to in the comment section, but I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. So even in the interview that I had with Pater and Solka, one of the things that they said, especially when they talked about how horses were deprioritized a little from where they were previously, was they wanted to put emphasis and put energy into things that are pushing the game forward. Things that are giving us players more content, more things to do, more sandbox toys to play with. A horse isn't necessarily a new toy to play with. And believe me, I was as disappointed as all of you when they said that they deprioritized horses. Why? Because I love the idea of a horse, having a horse in Pax Dei. I have a lot of really cool ideas of how horse gameplay might come out in Pax Dei, and I hope even if they chose 10% of what that dream is, it will be an incredible system. But I also have to take one step back and take a look at it and say, yeah, that's not going to make a random player who comes and experiences the game stick around for another 100 hours. It's not. Now, PvP mechanics, PvE, PvP mechanics that are having players go out into a very large space and either risk it for the biscuits, so to speak, to get these resources that are right here. Or now there's economic PvP, being able to buy swaths of land in Lyonesse that actually are PvP protected. You can't actually get hurt while you're inside of those spaces, then potentially getting raided. And these are all dynamics where it is now creating conflict, creating things for players to keep logging in and doing, creating demand because items keep on getting destroyed because of PvP. You just don't see that in dungeons right now. It doesn't exist. However, the dungeon gameplay can directly support that PvP gameplay because the people who have the best gear can go into PvP and lose it to people or use it, I guess. And those resources are going to then be needed for the next round of military campaigns. And that's why it's really important that these things get added in. And on top of that, while we did mostly talk about PvP and PvP related systems, the one thing that was not explicitly pulled out by a lot of people was that we also talked pretty extensively about the parish system and churches in Pax Dei and how those are connected to knighthoods and how there's this interdependency. Well, the churches aren't directly correlated at all to PvP. That is an entirely PvE related system that provides a very important resource to PvP players. The ability to PvP. You have to be knighted to then start any kind of campaign against another player. And yes, those knights can then promote soldiers, but there is now this interplay between players that are focused on doing the grace mechanics and doing more of the parish side of things, and players who are doing the knighthoods and the PvP. And I would imagine there's also a connection point, multiple connection points between those two to create a level of interdependency and competition on both sides, parishes and knighthoods. Either way, I'm very, very excited for this feudal system and parishes as well. And just the concept as a whole, there's now going to be taxing And there's also going to be grace kickbacks depending on what part of the feudal system or the parish system we're talking about. So people are going to be getting a supercharge of grace depending on if they're priests and people are following their parish. And then in other ways, people are going to be getting loads of gold, loads of cash from these trade towns and other PvP related systems. And those are going to combine together and actually come out to create a lot more gameplay elements. This is significantly better in my, like, I don't know why it's so clear for some of us that this is significantly better than getting a weather system in game or getting a horse. It's way more gameplay being added to the game than if we were just to get horses or a couple of new spells. And after talking with them, while I was disappointed to hear that some of these things were getting deprioritized, and my heart was utterly shattered when they said that there was going to be no cosmetic store, so I could just hand them my credit card and call it quits. Like, it, while those things were disappointing to hear as someone who wanted those features, at the same time, I am wholeheartedly convinced that this is the best course of action for Mainframe to be taking right now. Normally, I don't take a exquisitely one way or the other stance. I know a lot of people in the comment section are going to be madly typing right now that I'm the biggest fanboy for Pax Dei ever. But I do think that if you look at it on paper, this is absolutely the right direction for Mainframe to be going. And it's important for the game to be able to succeed, to have these systems in place by the time releases. Not so much some of those other features. And at the end of the day, we've got confirmation that dueling is coming to Pax Dei in the near future. That's probably the most exciting thing I've heard in a long while, because honestly, how are you going to get good at PvP if you got to risk it all just to go and get a little bit of practice? I'm very much so looking forward to it. All right, we're going to go and take a look at some new UI screenshots. This is all based off of feedback that you all have provided the devs. We're going to go take a look at that. There's actually a couple of really exciting kind of teasers in there as well, some of which we touched on during the dev interview. I'll see you over there. All right, and here we are. So one of the big things that changed recently in the wonderful cloud update, the beautiful, wonderful, fantastic cloud update, the update where Pax Dei went from 200 out of 100 to literally 20 times better than real life. The cloud update was incredible for how the game looked outside of some UI elements that were added into the game. And boy, did people give their feedback. I was taking a look at the official Discord and people were reeling at the changes. And in some ways, I completely understand why. Things were being hidden. It seemed like considerations weren't being made. But rest assured, the developers heard our outcries and have already been at work iterating on their most recent UI update. And this is the new stuff that is going to be coming. Now, during the interview, we did talk about master crafting. I didn't explicitly know all of the different tiers that were going to exist, but now we have confirmation of that. So we go from poor to common, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary. And then we also have epic tier 2 plus mastercrafted. So again, epic is just the rarity, whereas the tier is effectively the level that you need to be in order to use that particular weapon or piece of gear. And then mastercrafted is its own thing. So now there's UI elements that describe all of these things. Your poor are just dark, common is gray, uncommon's green, rare blue, epic, pinkish purple, legendary is gold. And then mastercrafted, you get this nice little crown that sits on top in the middle. So this is actually really good at showing quality, tier, as well as mastercrafted status. And then we got a bunch of different UI pictures as well, including from this particular screen, you can see when you click on an item, it now tells you all of the details of that item, which is pretty cool. I would also be interested to see where that helmet is. That would be a really cool helmet to have. But either way, then we also have new clan management tabs as well, where you can see people's applications. This is actually, as someone who has been managing a clan for many years now in Pax Dei, it is quite useful to have all of this information in a way, especially the roles. I do hope that under roles, we might be able to restrict access to certain things based on the roles that we create for players. Who knows? And then another cool thing that I have really wanted, it says create article here. I would really like for this to populate to a Discord channel as well. Like if we could port this over, and I've done it in other games before to less than successful degrees, but sometimes you can get plugins where these announcements will get actually published to a Discord or vice versa. And that would be really, really awesome. We also have the action bar right here where you can see that there's actually two different sections, two different bars here for players. And then we also have the crafting table, or not crafting table, but crafting menu here as well. And you can see it shows all the different ingredients and all of that. The one thing that I am hoping that they do add is the ability to set up, I want to make 12 of these things. If I want to make 12 of these things, how much resources do I need to have in my inventory in order to make those 12 things and do it without me having to do the mental math? That is a pretty cool quality of life feature. I hope that they include it here. But we just have a lot of new different things that we can learn from all of the various journal entries, equipment and items that are added there as well. And you can even get a comparison between the two now. Like if you have two pieces of equipment, your equipped one versus what's in your inventory. There's also, you can get all the different things that are used in recipes. Now, there was one thing in particular that I wanted to just bring up. And Mainframe, if you're listening to this, I would implore you to consider this. When it says where to find and then bio name here, I would implore you to consider not populating the biome name, just like not populating the recipes until the player has discovered them in that biome. So if I'm going around a biome and I've picked something up in that biome, then it should say, I've found this before in the biome name here. That would be really cool rather than holding our hands, because honestly, what's going to happen, and I know that this isn't the intent, but what will happen is you're going to have a clan that just has a box of everything. It's their everything box. You as a player would then just go and take all from that box, and everything gets populated into your journal. And now you know where everything is, and you didn't have to go anywhere to begin with. I have a feeling that's not what you want, as you want players to go out and explore. Just a consideration. We also have some really cool improvements to the map where you can actually click on things and get some context as well. But these are a lot better improvements than the market stall at the very bottom, which is giving you a description of all the things that you can actually see in the market stall rather than just kind of guessing or knowing what it does. So really great quality of life improvements. I think the one thing that players got frustrated with is that it seemed like this was pushed out before it was fully fleshed out. And I don't think this was all cooked up at the whims of player feedback immediately after verse 3 part 2 came out a week ago. But I do have a feeling that this was something that was getting worked on and it just got half pushed out in this branch. Maybe don't do that for UI changes. It would appear as though the player base is sensitive to it. But thank you again for taking our feedback and putting it into this. And I'm really excited to get to test it out whenever it gets into the game later on. All right, last thing that we are going to cover today are the 2 new Miracle lore pieces. I will see you over there. All right, and here we are in the Pax Dei official Discord. We've got 2 more lore posts with regards to the miracles. We've got Saint Gothberta, the patroness saint of jewel crafters. Saint Gothberta, Virgin of Gloria, dwelled in Axis Mundi, the center of the world, slums. When goldsmiths forged for the Holy See, duplicates appeared on her altar, letting her nuns shield Gloria's poor from hunger and ruin for as long as she lived. The poorest altar may hold the richest treasures. So it does seem like they're interesting that when the goldsmiths forged for the Holy See, duplicates appeared on her altars. But nevertheless, very cool that she's supporting all of those poor people. And it says here, Saint Gothberta, bless these humble hands, that what I shape may serve both beauty and need, and that no treasure made may ever overshadow the heart. The poorest altar may hold the richest treasure. So that's Saint Gothberta. And then we have Saint Gumaris. And Saint Gumaris, who is hailing from the Elysian Age, and also is the patron saint of foresters, who's giving us a increased wood cutting yield. So the life of Saint Gumaris the Hermit, patron of foresters, is steeped in mystery and miracles, with new tales still surfacing, yet his death remains unrecorded, lost to time like so much else about him. Take only what you need, and the forest will never be empty. So then over here it says, Saint Gumaris, guide my axe and steady my hand, that each tree I fell may honor the forest and sustain those who dwell within it. So Saint Gumaris the Hermit, also the woodcutter, the forester, and it is for him we get to thank for filling our kilns with wood to supply charcoal. But that's all that we have for today. Hopefully you enjoy. If you haven't had a chance to yet, please do go check out that full 1 hour plus developer interview. It has a lot of good information in it. A lot of changes are coming to Pax Dei that are great. And these aren't just changes. These are new features. These are great. I would love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this in the comments down below. If you haven't had a chance to do so yet, please do hit that like button, subscribe so you get notified whenever we post new Pax Dei or Pax Dei related content, and share this video with any of your friends who might be interested in learning more about Pax Dei. Until the next video, I'm Altari the Professional Gamer.